My parents treated me as dead for 8 years. But the night they finally texted me, they didn't realize they were calling home the woman who owned every cent of their downfall. My name is Ava Lockwood. I'm 27 years old, a fintech founder, and currently listed as one of the youngest self-made multimillionaires in the Midwest. Status, let's just say, alive, inconveniently successful, and no longer afraid of the people who once buried me. But before all of that, before the articles, the investors, the late nights that turned into entire weeks, I was just a frightened 19-year-old standing in the middle of my family's grand living room while my father announced to everyone that I was dead to the Lockwood name. His voice didn't even tremble. It slid smoothly across the marble floor like a blade. My crime? Declaring that I wanted to build something of my own, not inherit the Lockwood manufacturing legacy, not marry the man they'd quietly pre-selected for me, not polish the image of a dynasty whose walls felt like a mausoleum even when filled with people. I said the words, "I'm moving to California," and my father responded, "Then you are no longer our daughter." My mother didn't defend me. She didn't cry or reach for me. She simply closed her jaw as if sealing something away. The room watched silently, my aunts and uncles glancing down, my cousins turning stiff. And in the corner, Grandma Eleanor stared at me with eyes drowning in apology. She was the only one who whispered, "Call me when you're safe." Then the locks changed. My phone disconnected from the family plan. Every shared account vanished. I became a ghost they had swept clean. The first night alone, I slept in a car I'd borrowed from a girl I barely knew. I held the steering wheel like an anchor, not because I thought I had lost my family, but because I realized I never actually had them. When people ask what fuels ambition, they assume it's hunger or vision or genius. For me, it was none of those things. It was exile. It was silence. It was the echo of a father saying, "You are dead to us," and the violent need to prove that I wasn't dead at all. I was simply unborn into the world I truly belonged to. And so I began. You don't rise out of ashes, you crawl out of rubble. That's the part self-help books leave out. My first year away from the Lockwoods was a mosaic of desperation stitched with tiny sparks of opportunity. I worked nights in a cafe where the espresso machine hissed like it was judging me. I coded at dawn in a borrowed office where the security guard pretended not to notice I was sleeping under a desk. For a while, my life was nothing but coffee grounds, blue light, and the constant fear that maybe, just maybe, my father had been right to cast me out. But then came the idea. A simple automation tool for small financial teams, something that took weeks of manual reconciliation and turned it into minutes. I didn't know it would become an empire. I only knew it solved a problem I had once watched my father's accountants struggle with endlessly. I launched the prototype with $612 to my name. 6 months later, a team of 3. 2 years later, a team of 60. And on the 8th year, the morning my face appeared under the words Forbes 30 under 30, I stared at the magazine cover and waited to feel triumph. Instead, I felt a sudden, quiet grief. Not for my parents, but for the girl I used to be, the one who begged to matter. The interviews poured in. Investors called nonstop. Users increased by the thousands. I became Ava Lockwood, the unexpected fintech prodigy. Funny how people romanticize struggle once success makes it palatable. But through all the noise, one voice stayed with me, Grandma Eleanor's. She had sent letters, slow, handwritten ones, asking if I was eating, reminding me that I wasn't alone in the world. She slipped money into envelopes with notes like, "I know you won't ask, but take it anyway." She made me feel like family wasn't something you were born into. It was something someone chose to be for you. And then, one day, an analyst on my team mentioned something curious. Lockwood Manufacturing is drowning, he said. 14 million in delinquent debt. They're circling the drain. Something in me stilled. That name, the name that once disowned me, was now on its knees. I didn't plan revenge, not at first. But curiosity is corrosive. I looked deeper. I traced the debt. It was scattered across multiple lenders, fragile, vulnerable. And suddenly the path was clear. I had the power to buy it, every cent. So I did, quietly, cleanly, efficiently. Ava Lockwood, the daughter they erased, became the woman who owned the fate of the Lockwood empire. And then, right on schedule, my mother texted me for the first time in 8 years. Christmas Eve dinner, important discussion. I stared at the message and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not fear, just readiness. The text from my mother came on a Thursday morning, tucked between a meeting reminder and a wire transfer confirmation. Christmas Eve dinner, important discussion. No greeting, no apology, not even a question mark. As if I had been paused, not abandoned. As if 8 years of silence had been a mild inconvenience, she was now ready to resume. I read it once, twice, 3 times. My assistant asked if I wanted a response drafted. I shook my head. You don't outsource closure. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that for the last 3 months, I had been quietly acquiring the pieces of their collapsing financial empire. They had no idea that the faceless entity listed on their overdue lender statements was me. They had no idea that every desperate extension they requested landed directly in my inbox. They had no idea that I had watched them scramble, negotiate, plead, and I didn't intervene. Not until the final document cleared, an official note declaring that Astra Consolidated Holdings, a shell company with no visible ties to me, now possessed the Lockwood family's entire $14.2 million debt. Power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, waiting for the perfect moment to be heard. I accepted the Christmas invitation because fate had set the table, and because I wanted to walk through the front doors of that mansion not as a daughter, but as the woman who now held the deed to their survival. In the days leading up to Christmas Eve, memories resurfaced like old bruises. My father's face the night he disowned me. My mother's cold silence. My cousins watching me leave, too afraid to speak. But woven between them were the warm threads of Grandma Eleanor, the only one who had ever loved me without conditions. She was the only reason I hesitated. I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want her to think my return was destruction for destruction's sake. But this wasn't vengeance. This was reclamation. And when the snow finally began to fall on Christmas Eve, soft as breath, I drove toward the mansion with the debt contract in my bag, along with the truth they'd never expected to face. They wanted a discussion. I was bringing a reckoning. The Lockwood mansion glittered beneath the snowfall, just as it had the night they disowned me. Same wreath on the door, same warm yellow lights spilling from the windows, same hollow grandeur. My mother opened the door with a smile too polished to be real. "Ava," she said, as if trying the name on for the first time. My father appeared behind her, stiff and statuesque. They both leaned in for hugs that felt like negotiations. Inside, everything smelled of cinnamon and pretense. We sat at the long mahogany table, 12 feet of glossy, inherited pride. My father cleared his throat. "We're glad you came. We've heard of your success." He said the word like it had teeth. My mother folded her hands. "Things have been difficult for the company. We thought perhaps, as family, we might find a way to support one another again." There it was, not an apology, a request. I reached into my bag and placed a white folder on the table. My father eyed it. "What is this?" "Your debt," I said simply. Silence burst across the room like shattering glass. My mother's breath hitched, my father's jaw locked. "That belongs to the bank," he snapped. I shook my head. It did. Not anymore. They scanned the documents with trembling hands. And then they saw it. The signature, the legal transfer, the entity now in possession of their future. Mine. My father's voice cracked. Why would you do this?" "For 8 years," I said. "I was dead to you. Now you finally see the ghost you created." My mother's eyes glistened, not from remorse, but from fear. "Ava, please, we didn't know you'd succeed. We thought you'd come crawling back." I almost laughed. "You expected my failure to bring me home." And then, a soft, trembling voice from the doorway. "Ava!" Grandma Eleanor. She looked smaller than I remembered, wrapped in a blue shawl I once gifted her. When our eyes met, the room stopped spinning. She walked to me, cupped my face, whispered, "My brilliant girl," and pulled me into her arms. My throat tightened in a way no boardroom victory had ever made it. My father began to speak again, but Grandma Eleanor raised a hand. "You lost the right to ask anything of her." I turned back to my parents. "I'm not here to destroy you," I said. "I'm here to end the version of the Lockwood legacy built on fear." I slid the final page toward them. "Sign this, and you transfer operational control to me. The company survives, you retire quietly." My father hesitated until he saw the deadline clause. Tonight. Midnight. He signed first. My mother followed, tears streaking down her face. When the final signature dried, the weight of 8 years lifted. I stood, took Grandma Eleanor's hand, and said, "Let's go home." She smiled. "I've been waiting 8 years to hear you say that." Behind us, the mansion seemed smaller, dimmer, like a kingdom built on borrowed time. But outside, the snow kept falling, soft, endless, cleansing. And for the first time since 19, I felt alive.